Hello, my name is Martin Price, and I've been working for some time with UNESCO's Man and the Biosphere, or MAB program. And I'm very glad to be helping the team developing the nomination for Iceland's first Biosphere Reserve, which would be called a Vistvangur, in Snæfellesnes. And in the next few minutes, I would like to outline what a Biosphere Reserve is, how it's designated, what the potential benefits and opportunities are, and where we are in the process at the moment. Just to start with, well, what is the biosphere? It's the parts of Earth occupied by living organisms, including people, of course. It includes the different parts of the atmosphere, the terrestrial biosphere, the land, and the sea, where different organisms are living. In Snæfellsnes, we are thinking about a biosphere, the biosphere that is terrestrial. The land part, we're not going to include any of the sea around Snæfellsnes. In the formal definition of a biosphere reserve is this one: an area designated by UNESCO as a member of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. And the oversight for all of these places is through UNESCO's Man and the Biosphere program. There are quite a lot of biosphere reserves around the world, 750 nearly, in 134 countries and covering about 5% of the world's land surface. And these include not just rural areas like Snæfellsnes, but also some large cities. So actually 290 million people live in biosphere reserves at the moment. And of course, many other people visit those places. A biosphere reserve, the word reserve is not always recognized in a positive way in some countries, because some people see it as limiting what can be done, or that certain people are excluded. And so in some countries, including the UK, other words are used. In the UK, we use just the word biosphere. In Norway, for instance, they use the word biosphere area. And as I mentioned, in Iceland, some experts have found a good word for a biosphere reserve, which will be Vistvangur. A biosphere reserve is a region with a strong identity. It's globally recognized for its biodiversity and its environment, and the commitment of many different types of people and organizations to work together towards a more sustainable future. It doesn't restrict or exclude anyone or anything, although it's important to say that the core area, which I'll describe in a moment, has to be under national legislation. It has to be legally designated, and that is where we find Snæfellsnes National Park. UNESCO defines a number of criteria for a biosphere reserve: the 3 types of zones, stakeholder involvement, and a management policy or plan, and I will describe those in a moment. These are all outlined in this statutory framework of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves from 1995. So first, the zonation pattern, the 3 zones. First, in the middle, or in fact in Snæfellsnes it will be out on the west side, is the core area, which is devoted to nature conservation and legally protected. So this in Snæfellsnes would be part of the national park, which is most important for biodiversity conservation. Second is the buffer zone, where only activities compatible with conservation objectives of the core area can take place, and it has to have clearly defined boundaries, and this would be the rest of Snæfellsnes National Park. And then the transition area, where most of the people live and where sustainable development is promoted and developed. And this would be the rest of the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, which of course also is a regional park at the moment. In the statutory framework for the World Network of Biosphere Reserves, one definition of a biosphere reserve is a site of excellence to explore and demonstrate approaches to conservation and sustainable development on a regional scale. It's a global recognition for an area that demonstrates excellence in sustainable development practice. excellence is really important. That's what you want to aim for. And to make sure that this excellence is ongoing, it continues, UNESCO's Man in the Biosphere program runs a periodic review process every 10 years that looks at every biosphere reserve around the world. Every biosphere reserve has to have three functions which are linked. Conservation of biodiversity at levels from genes to ecosystems, development for a sustainable future, and what is called the logistic function, so research and monitoring, education and training, and that supports the other two. And the criteria for designation, as I mentioned, are in this statutory framework for 1995. So here are the criteria. First, the ones are linking to biodiversity, that it has to have different ecological systems, including different levels of human influence. So from the natural parts of the national park, for instance, all the way to the farmed areas of the Snæfellesnes Peninsula and the different settlements. And the area has to be significant for conserving biological diversity. The area has to provide opportunities to explore and demonstrate approaches to sustainable development on a regional scale, and that regional scale is very important. And it has to have the zones, as I mentioned before, and to be large enough, which Snæfellsnes Peninsula certainly is. There's also a number of criteria relating to governance, and this includes having ways to involve very different types of stakeholders in designing and implementing those three functions I mentioned earlier, a management policy or plan for the area as a biosphere reserve, which has to go beyond the existing plans for the regional park or the regional plan. There has to be mechanisms to manage human use and activities in the buffer zone, which would be through the national park, or implemented through the national park, and there has to be a designated authority or mechanism to implement the policy or plan, which has to be, how that will be developed has to be finalized in the next future. And finally, criteria related to what I said, the logistic function, programs for research, monitoring, education and training. Obviously, that is what's going on at the moment, but we hope that many new opportunities will be developed once the area is designated by UNESCO. So what are the possible benefits or opportunities of a biosphere reserve? Well, first, it's a global recognition. It is recognized around the world, and also there is the quality assurance, which makes sure that it's not just a label once, but it is a label that has a meaning in the long term. Second, international networks, which is something very special for biosphere reserves. These networks are for sharing experience and developing partnerships and potentially implementing projects. Most types of protected areas are not part of big networks. They exist, but in their own right, but they are not part of a global network or the different networks I'm just going to mention here. So first, globally, there is the World Network of Biosphere Reserves, all nearly 750 sites, and probably there will be some more approved this year. Then there are different thematic networks for sharing experience, developing partnerships. Two of those relate to mountains and coasts and islands, and of course that would be relevant for Snæfellsnes. Then there are the regional networks such as Euromab, which brings together biosphere reserves and the national map committees and scientists in different countries across Europe and across North America. And they meet every other year. They create thematic working groups. They sometimes develop projects working in different biosphere reserves across their region. And then finally, NordMab brings together the biosphere reserves in the Nordic countries and also the northern parts of North America. As I mentioned, strong identity is one of the characteristics of a biosphere reserve, and so some of these benefits and opportunities come from a focus on place and identity and how to improve the biosphere reserve through different activities that increase pride in the region's natural and cultural heritage and how it's managed, and also can really strengthen local economies. And that includes marketing opportunities for sustainably produced products or sustainably managed environments. And I've given two little examples here. One is a Biosphere Charter from Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve in Canada, which different businesses can display to show that they are working towards the goals of the Biosphere Reserve. Or in Galloway, Southern Ayrshire Biosphere Reserve in Scotland, where I live, this proud supporter logo you can find on businesses that support the goals of the Biosphere Reserve. And this really helps these businesses develop and work together as well in the region. Other benefits and opportunities can relate to bringing in funding related to the quality of the environment or the sustainability of the local economy, or potentially for education, research and training. The other opportunities relate to government policies. So Iceland supports the Sustainable Development Goals, and there are rural development policies and environmental and nature protection policies. So again, a Biosphere Reserve can help deliver on these. And local authorities can refer to the designation in policies for sustainable development or planning, such as the regional plan or the plans for the different municipalities. So where are we now? Over the last few months, with government support, the nomination form is being developed, and that's currently ongoing. Importantly, it's good to have support and awareness of what's happening among all the local people and even more widely across Iceland, and that's why I've recorded this presentation today and why many meetings have taken place and are going to take place. Then the form has to be finished. It's quite a long form, this nomination form. It has many different sections, and so it takes some time to put together. And to show that what is in the form is supported, there's a requirement for a lot of different signatures from the authorities responsible for the core area and the buffer zone, which is the national park, and also from the Ministry for Environment and Climate Change. But also it's important to show that the communities in the transition area support this, and so representatives of the local municipalities must also sign the form. The Icelandic National Commission will then pull all of this together, and they will also sign the form to show the support from that level, and they will submit the whole dossier, the form and other documents to the MAB Secretariat by the 30th of November this year. And then later this year, the MAB Secretariat will review the form. If necessary, there will be requests for information and changes. Early next year, the International Advisory Committee on Biosphere Reserves, which is 12 people from around the world who have been working with and in biosphere reserves for a long time, they will evaluate the nomination form. If necessary, they will request information or some changes, and they will make a recommendation to the International Coordinating Council, which is the highest level of authority for the Man and the Biosphere program. And in September next year, the International Coordinating Council will make the decision. And I hope that will be positive. And so Snæfellesnes, Vistvangur will become a member of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. I hope that's been useful. Thank you very much for listening.